Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This episode, in honor of the 72nd Annual DGA Awards, we're bringing back our annual series of episodes devoted to our popular Meet the Nominees Theatrical Feature Film Symposium. Now in its 29th year, the event is a roundtable discussion with the directors nominated for the Guild's Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Theatrical Feature Film. This year's nominees include Bong Joon Ho, the director of Parasite, Sam Mendes, the director of 1917, Martin Scorsese, the director of The Irishman, Quentin Tarantino, the director of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Taika Waititi, the director of Jojo Rabbit. These talented directors were gathered on January 25th at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, with director Bong Joon Ho accompanied by his translator Sharon Choi, to discuss the craft of directing and the making of their films with moderator Jeremy Kagan. Martin Scorsese was unable to attend the last portion of the event, but to hear him engage in conversation about his film The Irishman, please listen to parts 1 and 2 of this special, or go to his Q&A with director Spike Lee, recorded in New York. So please enjoy part 3 of our Meet the Nominees special, and listen to the nominees discuss working with actors and what they learned on this movie. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Let me pick up on there with this idea. I'd like to hear all of you talk about this issue of if you had to redirect your actors, what you said and how you got that to happen, if it happened. And Bong, why don't I start with you?
So I also try not to go to the actors after every take and tell them what to do and adjust performances. They're all great actors already, and I have a lot of trust in them. So Taika and Quentin, you guys have acted before, so you guys must know. Sometimes when you hear the director's adjustments and their directions, it feels like they're interfering with your process. So I always have this fear that my directions and requests may not help them, but actually just interfere with them. So what I try to do is just repeat takes, and the actors will naturally change the nuance of their performances in those multiple takes, and I take all of that to the editing room and experiment with it. But with Parasite, because you had so many characters, especially with the family scenes, they were all in one shot together. And oftentimes when you look at the take, with the father, his best take would be the second one. With the mother, it would be the first. And the son, it would be the fourth. So in the editing room, what I did was I cut them all out so that the performances would only be their best takes and stitched them together in one frame with visual effects. And that wasn't that difficult to do. There were a lot of that in this movie. So it's impossible to tell when you're watching the film, but there are several shots where it's actually 2-3 takes in one frame that were stitched together later on.
That's a new way of directing actors for some of us.
The only brand new thing I've heard here.
If you had rehearsal time, how did you use it?
It's very hard to translate, maybe. Sorry.
So all the actors and I don't really like to rehearse. So our process was just to move as fast as possible. We would do the simple physical rehearsals of coordinating camera movements and the blocking, but we would pretty much just shoot right away. Oftentimes it would feel like a rehearsal with the camera rolling. And oftentimes when we do shoot these rehearsal-like takes, the gears won't fit and something will feel awkward, but sometimes that would actually feel more realistic. So with the clip of Parasite you guys saw earlier on, the face that Song Kang-ho makes as he's pulling the tissue with the red hot sauce on it, he and I have worked together for 20 years now, so usually our interpretations pretty much coincide. But with this one, he had a different interpretation. Until the fourth take, he put on a pretty comedic face. So with that, I had to ask him, I had to tell him that you don't have to be funny. I just want you to make this face as if you're saying to the mother, I am so sorry that this is happening. This is not what I hoped for. And that's the nuance that I asked him to show with that expression. That was the fifth take, and that's what we used in the film.
when these characters are lying, which they do, for us or for the other characters who they're lying to believe what they're saying, how did you all arrive at a style of performance so that we didn't just think the other characters were being ignorant?
본인들이 거짓말한다는 생각이 없어요.
Because the characters don't believe that they're lying themselves.
그런 대사도 있어요.
So there's actually a line where the Kim mother points out the daughter and talks about how she would have become a great con artist, which means, but they're actually pulling a con job at that moment, but they're not even aware that they're doing it. They have no sense of guilt, and they don't really think that they're doing something bad here.
그 아들내미가 전 이게 사기라고 생각해요.
And also when the son, pulls up the fake diploma and says, this is not fraud, I'm really going to that university next year, that character actually believes that. And that's what I requested for the actor, that he will actually go to this university the year after.
In the scene that we saw where the son is directing the father, does he direct that way sometimes?
어떤 저 자신의 모습을 보는 것 같아서 좀 쪽팔릴 때가 있어요.
Sometimes it's embarrassing because I'm looking at myself.
Will you actually say the lines for your actor every now and then?
그렇게 그 애처럼.
So I'm not as intense as that son was. I tend to be more, say it in a more roundabout way. I usually always start with, that was great, that was the best take, but let's just try something a little different. That's my approach.
All right, one more question for you in this process. Sex scenes, like violence scenes, are oftentimes a challenge for any director and actors. How did you handle that sex scene?
특히 이제 기생충 같은 경우는
So Parasite, they're having sex on the sofa, but it's a very everyday, mundane moment between this married couple. And also in that situation, rather than the sex itself, it was more important that we had these people under the coffee table hiding there.
True, but the actors still had to do what they did. How did the director get them to be there?
아니 원래 거기 보면 약간
So there's that strange line of clockwise in that scene, if you guys remember.
그래서 이 클락와이즈인데
So that line was actually not in the script. I added it in my storyboarding process, and thankfully all the actors loved it. They were actually more enthusiastic about it than I was. So I was very grateful because I didn't want to push anything that they were hesitant about, but they were so aggressive with just making sure to get that scene right.
Got it. Thank you. Quentin, you have some amazing performances. I must say the scene in the trailer, I think, is just, I just think it's total magic.
Oh, wow, thanks.
And your choice, by the way, and what I'm fascinated with, it's the jump cuts that are there, whether that was thought about beforehand, afterhand, but I am really interested in your issue of redirecting performances, if and when and how.
Well, it's interesting because I heard this question and I was like, look, I've just been lucky the last, for a while now. I've been working with, I think, some of the best actors in the world. All right, so if I wanted to be more comedic or more stronger or quieter or anything like that, I would just tell them. I don't have to just tell them. I would just I would just tell them.
But I'm interested in that those words that you just used are kind of result words, but do you feel that that's enough because they're that talented that they don't have to be given another kind of, like if you say, I want this more comedic, that's enough?
Well, like I know what you want me to say, but it's just so specific to every particular moment.
No, I love it.
No. I mean, you want me to get in more detail, but in the abstract, not talking about this scene versus another scene, not talking about that actor versus another actor. It's hard to web span about it.
I hear you.
So it's like, look, I think it's part of a director's job to be a little metaphoric as you talk about things. Look, you can also say, I want it quicker, I want it, make it more of a joke, or you're not selling my joke. You can definitely say things like that. It's always more fun, I think, for both the actor and for the director to be a little metaphoric, so you're not on the money about it. But I think it's really only when you're stuck working with a bad actor or sometimes an amateur that you have to resort to kind of trickery or you play a little game to try to get your response. But with a professional actor, you just tell them.
In terms of that particular scene, let's deal with it for a second.
Well, okay. Well, in that scene, well, that was kind of an interesting thing because it was that kind of developed where initially it wasn't going to be a situation where Leo was going to screw up the scene or he was going to mess up the dialogue, but Leo really wanted to do that. And so then I wrote a version where that happens, and then he does it. And then once he did it, once we had that big take where he like gets out of the chair and woo, you're an outlaw, Rick, you know. Okay, well that's going to be in the fucking movie. All right, so now that's what we're doing. And I knew that we had to have a corresponding sequence in the trailer. And so I went to Leo and I go, well, look, here's the deal. Here's what I want. Here's what I think we need to do. We need to have you go into the trailer and have a freak out. And I don't want to write it. I think it has to be improvised. I think I'll give you a whole bunch of subjects for you to be freaking out about. But we'll come up with this. We'll take our little trailer set, and then I'll put a camera. I'll never change the angle. I'll just do it with jump cuts. Just think about Travis Bickle's sequence in his apartment for a Taxi Driver. So you won't have to worry about matching anything. You just go off and have, we'll do 3 tirades and we'll just run the camera until the footage runs out, until the mag runs out. And so I gave him subjects to focus on, that he could focus on. And it was just let it rip. All right, and then after a certain point, if he was going too much on a subject, I'd throw another subject out at him, and he'd go off on that. And we just ran it until the camera rolled out. So it's like, so maybe he's talking about his drinking, maybe he's making fun of himself for his stammer, then I think, and he's getting mad, then I throw, James Stacey. Yeah, and that fucking James Stacey, man. He couldn't be a wrangler on one of my show. He would be outlaw number 4 on my show. And he's just sitting there. He thinks he's so fucking smart. And and now that little girl, she's such a little, she thinks she's so smart. All right, just whether she's so smug, she's going to be out of work in 3 years and never going to work again. And then I was just, but then that actually started becoming fun. He would literally just turn on a dime, not knowing that it never had to be all together, that it would just be the best bits put together.
That little actress said that has an amazing line about acting that you have, which is what acting is avoiding impediments.
Yeah.
Where did that one come from, if you remember?
No, it's the absolute truth. Actually, there was this really funny moment we had. One of my favorite days on the whole production, and even before the production, but this whole experience was our script reading. And we had a pretty all-star script reading, all right? And I always really like the script reading anyway. That's almost like, it's like the first cut of the movie as far as I'm concerned. And if you don't show up at the script reading, you might not have a part, all right, the next day. All right, everyone has excuses, boy, they can't be there, and I have recast. Usually not because, I'm just going to teach them a lesson, because, so Sam, you play so-and-so's role. Wow, I like the way Sam did it. Fire that guy, and now Sam's playing 2 roles. I've done that 4 times. So, come to my script reading. It's a good day. You're going to want to be there. But we had we had an intermission, and my things are so long. We had an intermission, and literally, Luke Perry and Timothy Oliphant were going around, and they're like laughing about the little girl's like acting speech, and then like Timothy goes, and you know what? She's right about everything she says. We become professionals and like, this and that, but I mean, she's 100% right about everything, and none of us here follow none of us at that table follow all of that information.
Were there any times where you felt you needed to rework a performance? Are you there for any of them?
There was one actor. I won't say who the actor is, but there was one actor. They were a little over. I was surprised. They were they weren't adding enough to it. And I was surprised. And as I went in and talked to them about it, that they needed to bring more out of it. And look, so that actually is a situation where it is like what you're talking about. And that was difficult because you're working with them, but you don't want to rob their confidence. But they're just not doing it, all right? And that was actually a case where I had to say, you're not doing it. You're really not doing it. And I think you need to be over here. I don't know why I'm watching you. I don't know why I'm listening to you. I don't know why the other characters are listening to you. You have to give me a reason to listen to you. All right? And there was even a situation, you're telling a story. I can't even follow the story you're telling. What is the point of you telling this story? It's just it's a word salad. It doesn't mean anything. Tell me the story in a way that I can follow it, that it's not just a bunch of blah, 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 all right, but that I care about the end of the story.
Got it. Sam Wanamaker, the character of a director. It's interesting that in some of these movies you got somebody directing somebody else. You got Hitler directing somebody else too. But the point is, when you were creating this television director, what were some of the processes for you in talking to that actor about what he was going to do?
Oh God, well, Nicholas Hammond is so amazing. He, Sam Wanamaker is a real guy, all right? And he's a real actor, and he was a real director. And he did television, and he did movies, and he's like famous for being one of the real major movers of the Old Vic in London. And so, but as an actor, I always found Sam Wanamaker kind of a hammy actor. And so when me and Nicholas were talking about it, I go, look, I am positive as hammy an actor as Sam Wanamaker was, I'm positive he was twice as hammy a director. You know? So you cannot play this character too big, you know? And as opposed to, like, say, Peter O'Toole in the Stuntman, which was a little bit of a jumping off point, okay? I don't want you to I don't want there to be the genius lock that there is a Peter O'Toole in there. It's just, you're just hammy, because that's how you think directing is supposed to be. And so anytime you talk, okay, now between you two guys, all right, you know, then you tell a 20-minute story about what they've done and what they need to do next. And I couldn't believe it that we did we cut it out of the film. But he's just Nicholas Hammond was one of the best improv actors I've ever seen. He comes swooping in on a crane, all right, and to cut on the Lancer take, you know, and he's like, okay, cut. Marabella, you are my muse. Haley Mills, eat your heart out. That was perfect. Okay, now, Sam, Wayne, here's the thing with you. You gotta understand, you're two cowboys. You have never met each other before. You don't like, and then when you say, look, top hat, you can't do this, and you know what he's calling you. All right, same thing. All right, you know, and it's going to be a fight. It's going to be death right here, blood in the street, until little Marabella shows up and stops the two of you. And then even talking, like another scene where he's directing Rick. He goes, you're a Hamlet. He goes, and this chair that you're sitting in, it's the throne of Denmark. And you're a Hamlet. And you're both mad, driven crazy. Hamlet because of the death of his mother by his uncle. Caleb, because of syphilis. you know, and then little Marabella is your pint-sized Ophelia.
You know what I'm wondering is, are you ever this way on set yourself?
Okay, here's the thing. After Nick would do that, after Nick would play Sam, you had to direct like that. It was like the funniest thing to just give complete license to your inner British hack. Right? Just have him come out. And then just every direction was so flowery. Kate, walk with me, talk with me.
Great. Yes, it's true. Some directors are actors. And speaking of some directors as actors, Taika, that's you. I'm going to shift in terms of performance change. If there were issues that you did have where you needed to redirect a performance, but I'm going to ask one very specific scene. When the boy discovers the mother hanging, it's an incredibly powerful scene. It's
Spoiler.
kind of beautifully staged. It's true, you fell asleep doing it.
Oh, shit. I have no reason to see
No, see it now. That's the end to Heroes.
Can you talk? I don't know whether you did have to redirect some of your actors during this process, and if that language was there and what you did, and specifically in that particular scene, how you created it.
Well, that scene was always meant to be like that. The reveal was always going to be just the feet, and that's where we sort of seeded the shoes in earlier. And with Roman, he knew that was coming up, and so he was, I guess, preparing for it over the couple of weeks before, and he became pretty apparent that he was able to get quite emotional, and he's very sensitive. So, it's always doing stuff like that, especially with a kid. I was always a bit sort of like, I don't know, if he's not going to do anything, if he's just like, he's not going to take it seriously, well, how am I going to, I just didn't want to say, pretend it's your mother, anything like it's, to try and manipulate people that way feels false as well. So, but I was just very lucky in that we didn't have to revisit it, and he did it. And in terms of adjusting actors, I try not to go in and talk to them very much in between. Like if I do another take, I will just leave them to it, and unless there's something really wrong, I'll go in. But if I want something changed, I'll try, and I'll go up and talk to the cameraman. And say, "Oh, you fucked that up. Oh, sorry, we're gonna do it again." And then go just hope for a few takes that they're going to do something different, and then eventually I was like, oh, I've got to talk to an actor. And I go up and I go and then what I usually do, I go, it's like, is this what, right, you got to look, just, you know what I mean. And then and also I'm a notorious mumbler. So people, it's like now, everyone knows how bad I am. It's like, obviously I was talking. I know that's great. It's a joy, but I saw that. If it's like that, and then I thought this because he's doing over there. So I thought, but you got it. Just do it. Good. We got it. And then they'll just be bamboozled and like, what the fuck I was talking about. And then eventually I'll try everything. Just fast as possible. Just as an option. I don't like getting into the big long discussions about characters and stuff. I feel like that's their job beforehand. My main thing before I start work with anyone, I'll say, I don't want to see 10 takes of the same thing. I'd like something. If you're going to ask for 10 takes, do something different. Also, don't ask me for an improv take, unless you really think you're good at it. Because I don't. Still, actors often we do an improv take, which is just ring alarm bells for me, because usually, I only do improv if it's actually going to help the scene or move it on somewhere if there's a problem or something, or if you just want some more jokes now, that's something that they've come up with. Usually, actors will say, okay, improv take, action, and they'll just say the first thing that comes into their head. Circle tables are cool. Doesn't help. Not funny. Pointless. Waste of time. So, other people are good at it. Some people are not good at it. But it's just one of those things where I think people feel like... Also, by the way, every single person on the planet is improvising at any given second. So we're all improvising. We're all good at it. But it just turns out some of us shouldn't be doing it on camera.
Sam, I want to talk about this redirecting, but I want to talk about one very specific scene, which is Blake's death, which
Spoiled that as well now.
I just think it's his performance and what you got, and also George's performance doing. Can you talk a little bit of how that evolved?
Well, actually, I didn't, because of what I talked about before, I didn't have to direct the two boys, very much on the day at all, because we've been working so long, except in that one scene. And what I did with any of the interior scenes, like dugouts and rooms, tunnels, what have you, we rehearsed them on stage at Shepperton, and I built the walls out of piles of cardboard boxes so that I could move the walls easily to get the right shape for the scene. And then I would run it with the actors, and I'd bring Roger Deakins in and we'd look at it, and then we'd construct the set based on what we'd done. So this was one scene where I did it just with me and the two boys and my script supervisor in a room at Shepperton. And they absolutely nailed it. And this was months before. And I found it really moving. And I said, okay, I don't want you to do that again until we're ready to shoot it. So I want you to learn the physical shape of the scene, when you pick him up, what you say when, your physical position when he's lying on your lap, all of those things. I want you to go through it, just the two of you. Do it in your hotel room, whatever. I don't want to be involved. I don't need to be involved in it. And then I want you to hold it until I think the camera's ready to capture it. And unlike a normal process where you just, you could do what Taika's talking about. Hey, just give me something different. Do this, do that. We can shift the ground the whole time. They had to do it in a single long take. It was 8 minutes. And it had to be coherent. And any little thing from camera could derail the scene. So we could have a beautiful take of Dean dying Blake dying in Schofield's arms. But then if the camera was in the wrong position for when Schofield takes the rings off his dead hand, the take was done, and we had to start again. I mean, there was no way for me to cut into it at all, obviously. So for me, the job in that case was holding him back until I thought we were ready to capture exactly what he had to do. And then I also trusted one other thing, which was particular to this movie, which never normally, which is that he had a rig in his backpack so that when obviously stabbed by the German pilot, when he opened his tunic, the blood just started pouring out. And I told them not to fire the rig until I thought he was ready to react to the blood. And because I had a feeling that the feeling of just pumping blood out of his own stomach would be so overwhelming to him that he would react differently, and that is what happened. My favorite little moments in the movie is the look on his face when he sees the blood coming out of his own stomach, and it is genuine shock. I mean, it took us a long time to do this rig and all this sort of stuff, but it just pumps and pumps and pumps and pumps and keeps going. And there's something about bleeding and bleeding and bleeding that actually had an emotional impact. So in that case, it was unlike any scene I've shot. It wasn't like a stage scene because the camera was moving the whole time, but also because that rig would not have worked on stage. And it wasn't like a normal movie set because we weren't fragmenting the scene into its component parts. It was just one thing. And so I was encouraging him to sort of live it, really, as much as anything else. And the only things I remember saying on the day to George were, when he says, "Am I dying?" I think it's the one question you absolutely don't want to have to answer. But you will tell him the truth, but it's not easy. So take your time until you're ready to say, yes, I think you are. That, to me, is the act of a friend. There's a line about doctors, what constitutes a good doctor is they tell you the truth and they stay with you to the end. And I always think about that about friends, the act of a friend is to tell you that, yes, you are dying. So you use this last minute or two of your life to say what you need to say, and I will be here for you. And so I remember going in and saying that and a couple of other small things, otherwise directed the camera. But most of the time, for me, the boys were not the issue. The issue was the day players.
I was about to say,
so to have the
extras.
Well, to have my day players, effectively, 2 days, sometimes 3, Colin Firth, Benedict Cumberbatch, Andrew Scott, Richard Madden, Mark Strong, they were my day players, right?
Yeah.
So, but, the weird thing was, and they all were doing it for the right reason. They all said, look, we want to be part of this. I promised them they wouldn't have to publicize the movie, which their eyes lit up at that point. You mean I just have to be an actor, and just read the script and want to be part of this. And if you don't, that's fine. But if you do, come, I'll rehearse with you beforehand. But the issue for me there was we had to intersect with these lives that on paper were much bigger than the lives of the boys that we were following. These were generals or colonels or lieutenants who had responsibilities way beyond what these 2 lads were doing. And I didn't want them to feel like, stars popping up and doing their bit and then we move on. I wanted to feel like their lives began and ended outside of the frame of the camera, and we were intersecting with lives that we just saw a fragment. It was like little glimpse through the crack of a door of a life, and then we were through and past them. And each one had significance. But I also wanted them to not be too broad, because I didn't want them. For me, the movie was not about the generals were arseholes and they were all sending these men to their deaths. Didn't want them to be, rhetorical. I didn't want them to be arseholes. I wanted them to be people struggling in the fog of war to make sense of what was going on in a war that, this perfect storm of history where you could kill a man at 1,000 yards with a machine gun, but you couldn't communicate with a man 20 yards away because they hadn't invented the communication that would do that. And this puts you in this present tense world in which you never know what's around the next corner. One person says one thing, another person says another, and neither is the case, And I had to give this feeling that these people were just struggling in their rooms or wherever you met them with their own series of issues. And I had to calm them down because the energy, I always think of directing actors sometimes like one of those heat goggle things, you detect, you can see the body and you can see where the heat is. And I feel like sometimes on stage, the heat is in the wrong place. The heat's here and the heat needs to be here. It needs to be in your body, in your gut. You need to know where you are, who you are, what you need to do, and the heat drops in the body to the point where you feel them centered. And the problem with people coming in for short periods of time is the heat comes up here like this. Well, I'm acting, this is my bit, and you have to calm down. So I remember Benedict, it's very easy to misinterpret a speech like, he has a speech, he says, I've heard it all before. I'm not going to wait until fog, I'm not going to wait until dark. I'm not going to call my men back and send them out, only to send them out again tomorrow. And that came out to me as rhetoric in the first instance. I've heard it all before, that sort of thing. Right? And I said, no, it's not rhetoric. It's the truth. I've heard it all before. Okay, fine. So you just, it just had to pull the energy down from here to here. And that's what I was doing all the time with those guys. I was just rooting them. Like Andrew Scott, you've been there for months. You fucking hate this place. You're sick, you've had the flu, this has happened just before, this is about to happen. You drag 2 men back. When you say, I dragged 2 of them back here 2 days ago, I shouldn't have bothered. You fucking carried those fucking corpses on your back down into this hole and they were already dead. Right. Tell them that in that one line, So it's about lived experience and just have to compress. Take what you remember, take everything you've done, and push it down into this very tight space in which you're trying to communicate in a very limited time everything you've lived through. And that's what we're doing with the boys, but the boys had much longer to express those things, so they could come out in little moments here and there. But with the others, they needed to sit on this big well of emotion and experience, lived experience. So I had a lot of description, and to walk them around the set, showed them No Man's Land, and describe things that they would have lived through, talk to them about it, rehearse a little bit, and then say nothing on the day, as much as I could, and except occasionally step in and say less or more. And you said that to Quentin, but is that result-oriented? And I don't think it is in a weird way. Sometimes you just need to say 25% less, or quicker, or in a way, it's the clearest thing. You don't want to be standing on set talking about their deeper motivations when you're in the middle of a friggin' scene and you've got, 2 hours to go and the light's going. They should know that already. And you do want to be talking just very, very simple terms. And so for me, that was the big job of this movie. But, normally, shooting is a bit more experimental. You can try stuff out and you don't have to make the decisions. But on this one, I had to make the decisions as we were doing it. And so it was much more like theatre in that regard, because I had to say, that's it. Now hold that, but later in the scene you need to do that you did 2 takes ago, and you need to, there was a bit of this, okay, because I couldn't do that lovely thing that you have, and I couldn't do what Bong did, which is to splice up and, I did it once though, where I put 2 takes together with a split screen. But yeah, it was unlike any other movie in that respect.
Last question for all of you. Although I wish I could spend many days with you because there's so much to hear and share. But the last question for us.
Where are you going?
What did you learn? Don't worry about it, Taika. You'll have to stay.
I finished them off, I think.
What did you learn?
This is where all the good stuff comes out. This is where all the actual information.
What did you learn on this movie? What did you learn on this movie that if you now were to talk to another director, you'd give this piece of advice? This I learned on this movie about directing that I would say if I'm talking to another director, a new director, here's a piece of advice. Or, Sam, what piece of advice might you give
Well, I learned a huge amount on this movie because there was a bunch of stuff I'd never done before. So I learned what it feels like to direct your own work, which, these guys know. And I didn't know that. And it's vulnerable. You can't turn around and blame the writer because it's your fault, and on the day you have to, if someone says this line's not working, that means you have to rewrite it. And that I thought I learned a lot about what it is to be a writer in a movie and how vulnerable it makes you. I learned a lot about that there is no end to the language of the camera. That was, to me, was the big revelation, is that how quickly we get set into this, master shot, 2-shot, over the shoulder, close up, bing, bang, bong, quick, fancy shot every 3 whatever it is, the patterns that you find, there are endless, limitless ways to shoot a scene. Limitless. The camera is its own language. And if you push yourself and make rules for yourself which you can't break, which I did on this one, it forces you to find new ways to express things with a camera. And that for me was a huge revelation when I think you do become very, I at least speak for myself, set in one's ways. So that for me was the big learning experience.
Great, thank you.
I think for me, probably something I learn or relearn on every film is to enjoy the danger of whatever it is I'm doing this time around, or how nervous I might be about the project, if anyone's going to see it, if it's even going to be good. Because I think with every film I've done, I've always felt like if it feels like not to be stupid, but if it feels like a bad idea or if a dangerous idea or something that I won't ever come back from, then it's probably worth doing it. It's like there's a great interview with David Bowie about creativity, and they're like, what's creativity for you? And he says, well, it's like when you're walking out in the ocean, you're walking out, and you just start losing your footing, and you can just barely touch the bottom, and the water's up to here, and you start getting worried about where the bottom of the ocean is, and if you can stand up again. He says, when I feel like that creatively, he goes, then I know I'm doing good work. And I always try to remind myself to feel like that, and to enjoy feeling like that. And if I finish a scene, I feel like I covered it too easily. Or if it feels like it came too easily, then I get very worried, and I try and make it a bit more chaotic. I try and put obstacles in the way, or just sort of shake it up, and try and find ways of making it more interesting, and just keep I guess just not given to just it being easy.
Great metaphor, by the way, the water metaphor that you just said. For you?
I'm not really sure how much it would have to do with this movie particularly. It just basically I had a really good team. And a wonderful group of actors. I had a really good team, and everything that we were doing was fun. I mean, it was fun to turn Los Angeles back into 1969. It was fun to be in that world. Believe me, when I did Django Unchained, it was not fun being in the antebellum South slavery world every day. It was a fucking drag, all right? But this was a lot of fun. And so, so I'm not sure how much that has to do with this movie or how much it has to do with after doing a few movies, I've gotten easier at it. I think so it's not really answering your question, but I think I have changed a little bit between this movie and the last movie, Hateful Eight, because I think there was a situation where I think before I was a little bit more precious about each scene in its time, and you don't split. I mean, there was always situations where you have to split up a scene and finish it in another day, but that really shouldn't happen that way unless there's something else. And so you're building up to the right time to shoot a sequence, and then once you're doing it, you're doing it. And I was really kind of precious about stuff like that. And then all of this, and then in the case of The Hateful Eight, one of the things that was the most important was capturing the weather. That was one of the most important things that we were doing, is capturing that weather. So it's, and we would never really know what the weather was going to truly be until pretty much a day before. So if the sun was up, then we're inside the wagon shooting. And if the sun was doing something else, we were in the haberdashery. But if it's all gray, it's this. But if we actually got the snow that we were looking for, then we'd be up on this one mountain, all right, to do this one sequence. And you'd have a situation where the snow is falling in just the right way you want to do it, and it's like Sam Jackson trying to talk himself onto the coach. And so you're shooting Sam and all that wonderful snow, and that's great, but then we might not shoot the other side of that for 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks when we had that kind of snow again. Now, I wasn't used to working that way. And Bob Richardson even kind of said to me, wow, Quentin, I'm really proud of you. You're really you're outside of your comfort zone. You're like, oh, well, it's what we're doing. I mean, it's literally what we're doing. We're all up here on this mountain in Colorado to capture this weather and this real snow in this certain kind of way. And I think that carried over on this movie, where it was there were certain things that were important, and there were certain shots that we wanted to try to get that were important. And when it came to getting the freeway or getting Hollywood Boulevard or getting anything like that, there was a finite amount of time that we had to do it. And so I have gotten out of my own comfort zone about as far as the almost theatrical integrity of the dramatic scene that we're doing, and more it's a movie, and if you decide that some things are important or more important than others, then you have to readjust it to shoot to capture on film what's the most important to you.
And Bong, for you, what did you learn that you would say from this movie? What did you learn about yourself as a director?
So rather than something lofty that I learned, I would like to talk about something more practical, since you guys are all directors. So for me, Parasite was a unique setup. The DP and I, we always loved shooting on locations. We would go location scouting, take a bunch of photos, but with Parasite, 90% of the story happened in those two sets, and particularly in the Rich House, 60% of the narrative happens there. So for me, it was sort of the first time shooting an interior movie. So I never feel comfortable until I completely dissect all the spaces and swallow them whole and have a full mastery of the space. Otherwise, I feel anxious. So with Parasite, I was very worried on how I was going to cook these spaces together. And that's why, as soon as I finished the script, I had no choice but to work very closely with the production designer. I usually love to go to the space myself and take a bunch of photos, but with this, I couldn't do it. Both sets were completed almost right before kickoff.
그래서 그 비주얼 이펙트
So I asked the visual effects team to create a virtual model of the set that reflects the exact design that the production designer was working on. So through my computer and through this virtual model, I was able to roam around the space, choose various lenses, and simulate different angles.
그리고 또 하나의
And
도전
another challenge was it was necessary for the audience to also have full mastery and of three-dimensional geography of the space.
Actually, first half of the movie is the process of infiltration, the family, one by one. 그 스토리텔링을 하는 것 같고 인물 소개하는 것 같지만 사실
So the first half seems like it's progressing the narrative and it's introducing the characters to the audience, but actually at the same time it's educating the audience on the full geography of the rich house.
그래서 그 교육이 된 상태에서 이제 나머지 세컨 half에서
So the audience had to be fully educated on the space for the second half of the film to just rage in terms of telling the narrative and all the events that explode later on. So on the surface, the film features all these fun dialogue. It shows the process of infiltration, introduces the fun quirks of each individual character, but subconsciously the audience is being introduced and educated on this space, and that's something that I paid a lot of attention to during prep.
그래서 실내극을 정교하고 복잡한 실내
So now I think I can give at least a 25-minute lecture on how the approach to take when you're shooting an interior film inside a very meticulous and complicated space.
Well, in terms of educating, and in terms of learning, and in terms of sharing, you are all masters of a form that we all love, and we thank you for your creative genius and for your time here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
We hope you enjoyed listening to part 3 of this exclusive discussion. You can watch the full video of the Theatrical Feature Film Symposium on our website at dga.org/events. Past episodes of The Director's Cut are available wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.